How has sharing your story helped you to grow in your confidence?
I think it's allowed me to open up. Again, even as you mentioned on social media, you look at the highlight reel that it can be, and everything looks like it's great on the outside, and it is. I mean, I really do feel like I live a very blessed and privileged life, but opening up about my brain injury story has just let me kind of shed another layer in this onion of life, and just get kind of real and raw about who I am, what makes me me. And I feel like, at least for me, it's been a real humble reminder of enjoy the moment. I mean, life is so precious.
Yeah. So, how would you encourage survivors to begin to share their story if they don't know where to start?
That's a great question, especially because I didn't even start talking about my traumatic brain injuries until I sustained the fourth one. And again, it was this fear of like, should I even talk about this? I don't want people to think that this is a weakness or a hindrance or a disqualifier. And so I would say just start with one person at a time. Find that circle of people that you trust, or even create an alias on social media if you don't feel like you can do it in person. Just a way for you to start putting your thoughts out to the world, whether that's pen to paper or verbally. I mean, take that step. This is who I am. Even if it's something as simple as saying, I have had 3 concussions and this is who I am. I'm happy to be here. You don't really have to go into the depths of all the difficulties if you don't feel comfortable. But once you take that first step, the next step is going to be so much easier. I would also encourage people to get involved in different either nonprofits or communities. As I mentioned earlier, I have loved the Clubhouse group that you've created, as well as just your group here with Hope After Head Injury. So making sure that there are safe environments to be sharing your true emotions and your feelings, but just take that first step and the next ones will be easier.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. And I would also add, find a local support group if you don't have one. And there are a lot of them around. And if there isn't one near you, you can join my Zoom group.
Yeah.
But there are local support groups. And even just attending and listening to others share their story, I think is really empowering. And it just helps you to know that you're not alone and helps you to know that other people understand. And it can give you a safe space to share some of what you've gone through in an environment where people do understand. Another place that I've found helpful is a Bible study group at your church. You know, the women's Bible study group was a place where I was able to share some of the things and some of the struggles I was going through in a small group environment that was supportive. And they would pray for me. And, that helped me a lot to grow in learning how to share my story too.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And it's again, you take time to build those relationships so that you feel comfortable. I mean, you might not ever be 100% comfortable with the situation, but I wouldn't necessarily suggest starting out by just blasting to the masses how you feel, because at that point you do open yourself up for some criticism, and that takes strength to get through as well.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So, have you experienced criticism from others and how have you handled it?
I have. I wouldn't necessarily say it's directly attributed to the brain injury in terms of, being Miss Oregon and modeling. But even as an athlete, I think I had a really difficult time with the necessary resting periods, where even little jabs from my teammates, which probably meant nothing, but hey, why are you still sitting out? Why aren't you going to start training again? What's your deal? Like, you look fine, which, knowing all of them, that wasn't meant to come from a hurtful place. It was meant in a jestful manner. But when you are already really sensitive about what's going on, and maybe even feeling a bit uncomfortable or feeling like you don't belong, little comments like that are really hurtful. And so I think just finding that support system, you mentioned faith earlier. Faith has been my rock through everything. And so the more that, I mean, if you feel like it's necessary to confront people in your life who are treating you differently, I want to empower you to do that. But you need to establish what that boundary is for yourself. And if it's through social media, if it means blocking somebody, if it means writing back to them, whatever is going to make you feel the most comfortable. Establish that boundary, establish what you feel comfortable action wise doing. And there will be people out there. And I think as I continue on my Miss USA journey, I'm sure that it will only amplify the amount of people that assume that I'm fine. And you have to be secure enough in yourself to be okay with that.
That's a really good point. And it's understanding that your experience is valid and how you feel is real, whether or not people acknowledge or understand it. I think for many years, I was trying so hard for people to understand, or if they didn't understand, I felt so hurt, especially by friends, especially by people that I felt like were supposed to be there for me, extended family, people that you think should understand and should listen and should believe you when you say you don't feel well. But instead they think, oh, you just don't want to, do you just not want to come? Or you don't, are you just making excuses again? Or, and it kind of pushes you down.
It does.
And you have to, like you said, realize, and that's why support groups are so important, connecting with others who understand, and faith and understanding that, God knows what I'm going through, and that's the truth. And whether or not these people are going to understand it or not doesn't change who I am and doesn't change my experience.
Right. Yes, knowing your worth is so important. And I've also had to recognize there are people and activities in my life that are only meant to be there for a season. And so don't feel like just because somebody has been through a long journey with you means they deserve to stay. If you're not feeling supported and loved, or if you feel like you cannot support and love that person in return, it might be time to reevaluate the situation that you're in to be able to part amicably. Because I think the worst thing that could happen would be for you to carry on and for that relationship to turn toxic, because your healing journey is very important. And like you mentioned, there are going to be friends and family that understand and others that just really don't. And so there comes a point where you might have to say, I love you, but I need space right now. And that might be the healthiest boundary you could ever set.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk comparison.
Yes.
So I think there are a number of different topics we could hit on this. One of the, I think, most obvious being social media and comparison on, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, viewing other people's highlight reels. But I also think with brain injury, there's this aspect of we might end up comparing the beginning of our story to the middle of someone else's. Or we might look at somebody else's healing journey and think, why can they do that and I can't? Or why am I not able to do this? So what insight, advice, encouragement, wisdom, thoughts do you have on this comparison idea?
It's real. And I think all of us go through it. Like you mentioned, even the timelines, as you were chatting, I was trying to figure out, I think I've been on this concussion journey for 15 years, 16 years. And so even talking about it now, I mean, you might have been listening and just got your first concussion 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And so it's hard. Like, yes, I'm high functioning now, but there were moments in the past that I weren't there. And so it really is easy to look at the people around you, even in your own circles, and wish you were them or wish you were there. But I really do think that God has a plan and a purpose for each and every one of us. And so learning to find that strength and security in who you are and what you were created to be, it is a long journey and it is difficult. But like we keep echoing here, I think community is such an important part. Probably the worst thing that you can do would be to isolate yourself, because when you isolate yourself, it's even easier to slip down that game of comparison. And the other thing I've had to realize is not everybody has the same access to resources. And I think that's one of the reasons that you and I work so hard, because I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but at least from what I've gleaned from you, we both had trouble even finding where to go and what
Yeah.
steps to take and who to talk to. So that in itself is very, very difficult. And I'm grateful for people like yourself who have really gone out of their way to make sure that other people don't have to go through those same feelings that we had to go through. And so with that comparison, with that frustration, the more that you can plug yourself into a supportive community, I think the easier it will be in the long run to ensure that you have the support that you need to find that worth and to find that security so that the comparison game won't take you off track.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love everything you shared. Something that I've been kind of processing in my own like prayer life and thought life is this idea of staying in your lane, and this idea that we're all created for a purpose. And what I was created to do is not the same thing as what Allison was created to do. We have different strengths and we have a lot in common, but we have different places that God has placed us. And sometimes what social media does, and this was not the case before social media existed. So, but what it does is for all the good things, the way social media connects us, it also connects us to see people and to see what they are doing and to look at them and think, why am I not doing that?
Right.
And if we didn't have social media, you would be probably a lot stronger in your own strengths and more inclined to do what you want to do instead of trying to jump on the next trend or trying to maybe create a home business you were never meant to create, or trying to do all these things and fit yourself into these molds and these boxes that you see online that maybe are not meant for you. And I know that I found myself in that trap of feeling like I'm not doing enough or, I'm not enough. And in reality, each and every one of you, you are enough. You're exactly who God created you to be. I'm not Allison. I will never be Allison. I will never be a model doing pageants. And that's okay because I'm not meant to do that.
Right.
I am a singer-songwriter, and maybe that's not something that Allison would be doing, is playing the piano and singing on stage, right? So we have to understand that we're all different. And when we start to look at other people and think, I wish I was them, we downplay our own strengths. And we spend time, precious time, trying to be something that we're not. And so I want to encourage all of you, whether you're a caregiver or a survivor, if you're listening to this, there's something inside of you that God created you to be. There's a strength that you have that you may not know you have. I never wrote a song before my brain injury. Not one. I didn't know I was a songwriter. I had to experience that on my own. And I started being really authentic to myself and in my prayer and in my personal time, and songs just started coming out of me. And so maybe you are a poet and you don't know it because you haven't spent enough time digging deep and journaling, or maybe you're an artist and you've never picked up a paintbrush, so you don't know. And so I just want to encourage you to just try new things and be everything that you were made to be, not something that somebody else is, because your brain injury does not make you less of a person. Your brain injury is not your identity. And that's something that I'm going to keep hammering in because I struggled with that for so long. But your symptoms is not who you are. They may affect you every day, but you have so much to offer that you can do with a brain injury because God doesn't make mistakes. And so whatever you were called to do, your brain injury will not stop you from doing that thing.
Right. I have one analogy I feel like I really need to share. And this analogy goes for people who may not quite grasp what we're talking about. So let's talk about ice cream for a second. With ice cream, all kinds of flavors. Imagine walking in the shop and taking in the smells, and you've got vanilla and chocolate and strawberry. Say my favorite is vanilla and yours is chocolate. That doesn't diminish the greatness of both of those types of ice cream. And so for me, anytime that I get down on myself, that is the easiest thing for me to think about is I am my own kind of ice cream. I am my own unique, loved, created, prayed for flavor that somebody out there or I myself need to command and love and enjoy. But just because you might like chocolate ice cream or you might like sprinkles on your ice cream doesn't diminish your power, your success, your voice, your story. And like you said, you are not your brain injury. That might be the cherry on top. That might be something that makes you who you are, but you do not have to feel like you're damaged goods.
Yeah. And you're not broken. You know, I spent many, many years thinking that I was too broken to offer anything. I knew that I could sing and I could write songs. And I felt like the only thing I had to offer the world was music, because I could sing a song for 3.5 minutes, but I couldn't walk down steps without feeling like I was going to fall. I couldn't cook a meal. I couldn't hold myself together the other 23 hours of the day that I wasn't singing. And so I kind of put my identity into this idea of I'm really broken, but at least I have this, and everyone's story is unique, like Allison said, but like she said, you're not damaged goods, you're not broken, and you don't have to reduce yourself to one thing. You are a multifaceted, beautiful, amazing person, and there might be some areas that you're still working to grow. That's why I have this podcast. Here on Hope Survives podcast, I'm interviewing a variety of different guests, and a lot of it is going to be trying to give you guys tools and give you support and medical experience from interviewing professionals and stories like this with Allison of interviewing survivors that are inspirational, because I want you to know that you are a multifaceted person and you have so much to offer. On that note, Allison, is there any last words of encouragement or hope that you would give to our survivors, as well as any practical tips on ways that they can work on their confidence?
Through your darkest night, hope survives.